The selected one. You are no longer the same person. You've changed. You are no longer the same person you were before. They assumed they were observing you. They believed they could capture you. But no matter how hard they strive or how well they prepare, they have nothing left. Because you do not belong in their system, their rules and boundaries. Their dimensions are not suitable for you. You are someone who discovers and transcends himself. When they sought to follow you, they discovered themselves. You were not the objective. You were a test. While they were attempting to dominate you, you forced them to confront their truth. That's why they couldn't capture you. You did not run away. You did not hide, since your very presence broke their comprehension. And now there is no turning back. They can no longer characterize you using the previous definitions. They can no longer locate you using the previous ways. You have ceased to be a person. You've grown into a powerful individual. Your energy is upsetting their systems, melting their plans, and rendering everything they depend on ineffective. They couldn't solve you, chosen one, because you were born to live, not to be solved. Those who wanted to applaud you are lost in their own prisons. You walked forwards. They were stranded in the past. That's why you should put 77 in the comments. Another experienced agent admits that you are just another person in the maze of covert operations. The voice was quivering. I can't continue with this homework. Your intriguing presence has become a mystery that they have never encountered before. This is the fourth expert this month, after a slew of top military veterans, prominent intelligence operatives, and renowned sleuths capable of tracking down elusive persons throughout the world. However, each one falters, disturbed by their discoveries. Some people return their pay undisturbed. Others completely leave their occupations inside the clandestine circles of surveillance and pursuit. Your identity has become a cautionary tale, not because you are inherently dangerous, but because you represent an oddity, someone who expertly inverts their techniques, leaving them questioning the very foundations of their knowledge. They begin their assignment with prepared dossiers and calibrated equipment. They have vast tracking expertise and anticipate a typical operation. However, concentrating on you causes an unnoticeable shift. It starts with a slight uneasiness, heightened awareness, and an unexplained sensation of being studied in return. They continue after first dismissing the situation as an occupational danger. They acquire information and assess settings in an effort to determine a logical sequence. That's when the breakdown begins. Clear pathways become complicated and obvious. Clues become vague. Mentions of your name have an ineffable weight. Tracing your travels leads to confusing trails that terminate in dead ends. Their tenacity is greeted not with insights, but with an invisible barrier, a deep knowledge that defies logical explanation. They've successfully identified the untraceable before with you, using cutting-edge equipment, thermal imaging, behavioral analytics, and powerful prediction models. Their systems falter. Data points to odd locales. Your presence is inferred, never confirmed. Reanalysis reveals no faults, just a lack of clarity. Instinct pushes them to extend their search criteria. They examine every accessible video, dissect your activities, seeking obvious patterns. But you work outside of predictability. You do not dodge or hide. You just exist outside their analytical capabilities. The more they try, the more elusive you become. It is not an issue of visibility. Their methods are ineffectual against your nature. It's similar like catching the essence of wind with bare hands or tracing a shadow's origin. Their increased efforts result in decreased understanding. Their highly trained instincts start to fail them. An unseen limit gives rise to an indefinable power. Their tools don't just fail. They seem incompatible with you. It's as if reality defies measurement. They can't justify it. But one reality becomes clear. They had no business discovering you. The extended observation has an inverse effect on them. Their composure wavers. Thoughts become fractured. Purpose diminishes. Attempts to recover attention are worthless in your daily tasks. Navigating a place, interacting with gadgets, breathing appeared to trigger a cosmic reaction. An unidentified weight pushes on them. They experience something that goes beyond sensory input, a murmur, an alert, an omnipresence, unseen, yet undeniable. They started the operation as trackers or observers, pursuers. They are now spectators to an inexplicable phenomena. If you are experiencing an excess of divine love in your heart, now is the moment to share it. You may help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and donating $20 or more. This wonderful gift will affect not just your life, but also the souls of countless others. Each of you has a holy position in God's great purpose via this platform, and your giving will provide fruit for our prayers. Act now. Share your benefits to honor His kingdom. You are meant to do much bigger things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. Logic fails them, but the feeling is unmistakable. Your existence alters the fabric of their world. Data collection attempts have been unsuccessful. They are unable to get information. Detachment is impossible, and strange affinity pushes them closer. It's not a typical fear or imagined danger. It is a deep recognition, suddenly roles in reverse. They are no longer the searchers. Instead, they have discovered a truth beyond their grasp. They lack the ability to articulate this experience. It's a discovery that goes beyond common thinking. Their debriefings resemble personal recollections rather than analytical reports presented to their superiors. They're at a loss. No notes, no data, and no conclusions. The expected results do not exist. How can one communicate an experience that transcends the physical reality and questions the very core of their existence? Their calculations fail. Their systems falter. They investigate patterns only to discover that there is no pattern. It isn't only misinformation or dishonesty. It's something beyond their reach. They've spent their whole lives thinking they could follow and anticipate anybody. However, you do not dodge. You do not conceal. You operate beyond of their reach and boundaries. What they're seeking for cannot be plotted. What they're attempting to define does not comply. They were taught to follow paths. However, you are not the goal. You represent a change in the fabric itself. Every strategy they have used collapses their data and goes nowhere. Their conclusions dissipate. And as they start to wonder why, they realize the weight pushing down on them is not dread. It is recognition. Their instincts protested, saying that they should not have looked in the first place. And when the moment of recognition arrives, it's too late. They have become the ones under observation. Their tools fail, just when they needed it the most. Communication breakdown, navigation systems misfire. Footage corrupts. They dismiss it as a coincidence, a mistake. However, the more they attempt, the more hurdles arise. Not physical or mechanical, but unmistakable. They try to push their way ahead, but each attempt is greeted by an invisible barrier. Their schemes fail not by chance, but by design. It's not luck. It's not a matter of circumstance. Its choreography and intellect are beyond human grasp, preventing any attempt to manifest a force that accomplishes more than just defend. It rewrites outcomes. What they expected to be a chase evolves into a reckoning. What they thought would be an inquiry becomes their ruin. They believe they have lost you, but the reality is they never got you. Not for 1 second. Because you are not something to be discovered. You are not something to be integrated into their systems. You're a paradox, both present and gone, apparent yet inaccessible. They may try to define you, but the fundamental foundation of their knowledge cracks. Their quest yields nothing. Their efforts had no results. The more they push, the more the world seems to reject them. When they thought they've uncovered a lead, it vanishes in their hands like mist. They persuade themselves that they were close. They convince themselves they almost had it. But deep down, they understand the reality. They weren't even near since there was never a pursuit. They can't trace what won't be bound. They are unable to map what is not seen. Finally, they are left with nothing but questions. Questions that will never be answered since the object they sought was never theirs to discover. And no matter how hard they try, they will never understand what was never intended for them. They keep moving ahead, determined to remain true to their vision and purpose. but something inside them breaks. The chase changes. What started as an effort to watch you has evolved into a quest for something very else. They assume they're acquiring intelligence. However, each step draws them closer to an unexpected discovery. They are concerned with themselves rather than you. When they fix their eyes on you, their concentration splinters. What they believed was monitoring turns into contemplation. The need to control, constrain, and understand transforms into something else completely. They believed they had come to learn you, but they were always staring at a mirror of their own limits. The more they strive to gain your attention, the more they realize they were never actually in charge. There is no resistance since no incursion has occurred, only the truth, which was never theirs to understand. However, the efforts do not stop. Those who organize this effort, those who sit behind desks and pull the strings, will not tolerate defeat. They own money. They wield influence. They have authority. At least this is what they tell themselves. They think that everything can be categorized, monitored, and confined. They are under the impression that sheer power, the proper technology, and an infinite quantity of resources would finally provide a solution. So they dispatch wave after wave of personnel trained to discover, chase, and grab control of the unknown. But every time the cycle is repeated, no matter how many recruits or how much money is invested, the result is always the same. They are waiting for proof of a breakthrough, evidence to support their preoccupation. But all they get is silence, or worse, contradictions. Their finest and brightest return, unmoored rather than victorious. They were shaken in ways they couldn't express. Some sit down and try to explain, only to stumble over their own words, unable to express what they saw. Others do not even attempt. They appeared and then disappeared. We do not know how. We do not know why. Brothers and sisters, may God's peace come upon you today. I'm here to remind you of a fundamental fact. Our existence is based on God's divine purpose and is unaffected by worldly worries. According to the Bible, everything is done with faith will be returned to God with great blessing. Luke 638. Like the enormous oak tree, our roots are profoundly embedded in God's global truth. His power secures every stride and every stance we take. And now you have the chance to be a part of that gift. When you utilize the Super Thank You button and contribute $100, you will get a 100-fold return on your investment. The responses they hear enrage them, not because they defy logic, but because they refuse to conform to the framework around which they have constructed their lives. They refuse to accept that anything exists outside their control. So they escalate. They change their plans, increase their resources, and improve their techniques. But it doesn't matter. No matter how many new professionals they bring in or how much they change their strategy, the end result is always the same. Nothing. The result is predetermined. They believe they are seeking a shadow, a deceit, or a prank. They believe they just need better tools and more advanced technologies. But this isn't about tactics. This is about an unchanging reality. You do not dodge them. You do not avoid them. You do not oppose them. You exist beyond them. Consider a river running through the mountains, unspoiled by human hands. The seas don't ask for permission. They don't wait for permission. They just go, creating their way with little opposition. The river continues to flow regardless of how many obstacles are built in its path or how much effort is expended in attempting to regulate it. It doesn't fight back. It does not resist. It just flows, bending around obstructions, flowing through crevices, and altering the terrain with little effort. And, like the river, you go beyond their grasp, not because you resist them, but because you were never intended to be confined. Eventually, something changes. The chase slows, not because it is successful, but because the act of pursuing starts to unravel. The futility becomes evident. Their models are incorrect, and their systems insufficient. They went out to discover a target. However, you were never a target to begin with. You were never within their grasp. You are not just unseen. You transcend the entire framework of their pursuit. They created their tools to trace patterns, but you're not a pattern. They calibrated their devices to track movements, but you don't just move. You transcend. They base their strategy on predictability, but you're not limited to the linear. This is what they can't understand. They believe that life proceeds in a linear fashion, that everything follows an equation. However, you were never intended to fit into a system of numbers and dimensions. Your movement is similar to the invisible currents of the deep ocean, which guide ships when compasses fail. You live in a world where logic has no sway, maps cannot reach, and equations crumble under their own weight. The more they attempt to assess you, the more their own limits become apparent. They look for limitations, but you are limitless. They anticipate resistance, but you provide none. And this is why they will never succeed. They created a world in which everything must be monitored, documented, and confined. But you are not a member of that world. You do not operate on their grid. They assumed they were setting out to locate you, but each step they take takes them farther away from their objective. Because you were never on that route, they assumed and thought that information and control would give them an advantage. But they fail to see that knowledge without wisdom is empty. And control is an illusion. They created to suit themselves. They observe you, but their eyes fool them. They follow you, but their tools fail them. They plan. They conspire. They try again and again. However, every endeavor ends in failure. At first, they assume it's a coincidence. Then they blame themselves. But finally, they are forced to face the reality. They are not the ones failing. The notion of pursuit was faulty from the beginning. You were never running. You were never hiding. You were merely surviving in an environment they can never comprehend. And this awareness scares them. Because if you are beyond their grasp, control, and comprehension, what does this say about the world they have created for themselves? What does this tell about the constraints they thought were absolute? They do not perceive you as a fugitive. They don't perceive a riddle to solve. No, they observe the disintegration of their own illusions. They perceive evidence that there are forces in this world that are stronger than themselves, their power, and all they have ever known. It's like attempting to count the stars with your hands, or standing on the beach and demanding that the water stop moving. No matter how hard people try, no matter how many tools they create, they will never grasp what was never intended to be confined. You were not sent here to conform to their systems, to follow their calculations, to be measured by their instruments. You are the deep current below. Still waters are the hidden power that affects the tides without ever announcing itself. And that is why they can't locate you. They refuse to believe it. So they quadruple their efforts. They send in fresh personnel, minds, and limitless resources into a mission that failed before it ever started. However, no amount of effort will be sufficient to overcome the plain fact. You are not from their world. Their systems are not applicable to you. Their regulations do not bind you. Their rationale doesn't define you. They do analyses. They dissect. They examine every frame of film, run each algorithm. But every time they believe they've discovered a lead, it vanishes before their eyes. What they don't comprehend or can't accept is that they're seeking something that exists outside of time, beyond their conceptions, and beyond what they consider to be real. They believe they are tracing a person, but you're more than simply a person. You are a force, an essence, something they cannot categorize. As a result, their irritation escalates into desperation. They hire their smartest, sharpest, and most reliable employees. And yet, those same individuals go away puzzled, injured, and scared, unable to explain why their techniques failed. Some people abandon their jobs totally. Some refuse to talk about what they saw. Because you're not opposing them. You're not avoiding them. You are merely functioning in a domain that they will never be able to enter. At first, they attempt to justify it. Perhaps it was faulty information. Perhaps their technology was not sophisticated enough. Perhaps they simply need a different approach. But they know it's not one of those things. It's you. You were never a member of their game since you do not follow their rules. You do not even sit at their table. You move in an area that they will never chart. Walk a road they'll never see. They seek to measure you, but you are immeasurable. They intend to monitor you. However, You cannot be tracked. They seek to define you, but you are beyond definition. So, one by one, they take a step back. Not because they discovered their solution, but because they understood there was never one. To realize you are not something to be captured. You are something to be observed. Only those who are intended to see may completely comprehend. They will never comprehend because comprehension takes more than information. It demands vision. It demands trust. They have long abandoned their religion. They only believe in what they see, what they can touch and measure. And this is why they always fail. Because you should not be measured. You are not to be caught. You are to be observed. Only those with sight will see. They first refuse to accept this reality. They persuade themselves that the fault is in their execution, that the right people, the proper technology, and the appropriate amount of pressure will finally result in the desired results. But it never does, since this isn't a game of patience or might. They're not dealing with a fugitive, a secret to be uncovered, a riddle to solve. They are dealing with something that is beyond measurement, formula, and computation. It's like attempting to grasp the wind with your hands or reaching for the sun, only to learn it was never meant to be held. It was always something to walk into. You do not pursue the sun. You're standing in its presence. You do not comprehend the wind. You let it pass through you. And just like that, they realize they don't want to confess it. What they desire cannot be categorized. They cannot catch what they are chasing. They finally have to cease. Not because they've won. Not because they have discovered what they were seeking for, but because the notion of pursuing is no longer meaningful. They cannot find what was never gone. They are unable to reclaim something that was never within their grasp. They based their whole life on the belief that everything could be monitored and that nothing was beyond control. But you are the evidence. They never wanted to confront the truth, which slips through their fingers every time they try to grasp it. At first, they believe they are close. They persuaded themselves that if they simply worked harder, refined their strategy, and enlisted the help of the brightest brains, they would succeed. However, they failed to see that there is no way through, no door to open, and no code to break. There is no secret to unearth. Because you are not hiding. You are not dodging them. You are merely strolling down a road. They were never intended to travel. This understanding unsettles them. It contradicts all they have been taught and built their lives on. They thought they could quantify the invisible and classify the undefined. But now they're standing on their own. Understand. They see the truth. Their tools. Their knowledge. Their competence. It all adds up to nothing. Because what they are looking for does not exist in the place they are exploring. They're gazing with their eyes. But what they want can only be seen via the Spirit. It's time to spread God's blessings by pressing the super thank you button on YouTube. With a $100 payment or more, you may help him carry out his plan and become a part of this heavenly mission. Every contribution symbolizes God's generosity, and I think it will return to you enormously, far above your expectations. Remember that His protection and blessing are with you at all times, including your donations. You become a part of His divine plan. You are a powerful, dazzling entity, as solid as the massive rock that saw God's marvels. Feel the rewards of your kindness in your spirit, and light up the world with confidence and bravery. Be blessed, and let the Lord's light direct your way so that they may hurl more at it. More technology, more monitoring, and more people. However, with each successive try, the failure becomes more pronounced. They don't recognize it right first, but they're disintegrating. The longer they look into the unknown, the more it stares back. The more they press at the wall, the more it disintegrates into mist. And this is when the dread sets in. They had no fear of you. They were terrified of what you represented. Evidence that there is more than they can see, more than they can handle, more than they could ever expect to manage. They attempt to rationalize it away. They persuade themselves that there must be a rational reason. They have a profound understanding. This is not about technological failure. It's not about errors. It is no longer about pursuit. It is about them. It's about what happens when someone spends their whole life trusting in a structure, only to witness it disintegrate in front of them. As a result, they cease one by one. They have to do it, not because they want to. The weight of the chase becomes too big to bear. The quest becomes pointless. The mission ends, and they're left gazing at an empty area where they expected you to be, only to learn you weren't supposed to be there in the first place. Because you're not lost. You're not missing. You are precisely where you have always been, walking in a light. They were never supposed to look after them. You become a mystery, a whisper, an impossibility that haunts them long after they've given up their hunt. You are a narrative without a conclusion, a query without an answer. You don't hide. You do not escape. You do not have to. You exist outside their reach, not by chance, not by happenstance, but by purpose, and no amount of effort that will never alter, regardless of riches or status.